Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to session 11 of Santhavani. The afternoon unfolds with reflections from the message of love, compassion, and forgiveness brought to humanity by Christ. It is our honor to welcome His Excellency Archbishop Dr. Peter Machado, Archbishop of Bangalore, an eminent spiritual guide and a gently voice of harmony. Your Excellency, with deep respect, we invite you to address the gathering, sir. I would like to call on the stage my colleague, Sri Prakash Kamatji, to give a brief introduction about our esteemed guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all. It's my pleasure to give a brief introduction of Archbishop Peter Machado. Archbishop Peter Machado, the 7th Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Bangalore, was born on May 26, 1954 in Honnavar, Uttara Kannada district. After completing his seminary studies at the Papal Seminary in Pune, he was ordained a priest on December 8, 1978 for the Diocese of Karwar. He holds a commerce degree from Pune University and a doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical Urbania University in Rome. On February 2, 2006, Pope Benedict XVI appointed him Bishop of Belgaum, where he was ordained on March 30 of the same year. Following 12 years of dedicated service in Belgaum, he was appointed Archbishop of Bangalore on March 19, 2018 and installed on May 31, 2018. Recently, on January 29, 2023, he was entrusted with the responsibility of Chairman Bishop of the CCBI Laity Commission, continuing his distinguished journey of faith and leadership. I now request Archbishop Peter Machado to present his paper. Thank you.
I request our Director Sri H.N. Suresh sir to come on dais and felicitate our His Excellency Archbishop.
Respected dignitaries, I am very much humbled today to be in this group of people who are interested in hearing about God experience, and also how perhaps we could impact the lives of others, the existence of others, through our own life, as it were, in some way or other. I belong to the Christian community, and the Christian community, of course, Christianity was born with Christ Himself, Jesus Christ, and we believe in what's called the Trinitarian God, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and it was the Son who came down to earth in order to lift mankind to God Himself. One of our saints, St. Augustine, says, God came to the earth so that He could take man to God Himself. So in that sense, human life has meaning, human life has a worthy aspect, and more than anything else for us, to be human is also being part of divine. There's a beautiful thought to say that humanity is in some way part of divinity also. The divine elements are in human existence also. And so, perhaps without taking much time, I thought I could give a little experience of our Christian experience, which has got the values of all the other religions, because every religion speaks about God. Every religion speaks about human beings. Every religion speaks about peace and harmony. Every religion speaks about love. And so in that extent, as it were, we are all connected with each other. Perhaps the Hindu religion, the Islam religion, the Baha'i religion, the Zoroastrian religion, the Buddhists, everyone has got their eyes, or perhaps the eyesight, fixed on God and the spiritual matters. And therefore today, perhaps, as I give the experience of, you have taken beautifully Santhavani, the lives of saints or the experience of saints, and India is a land of saints and sages. And therefore, every saint is connected to us because of his spirituality, because of his divine elements as such. And so from the Christian point, I thought I could speak about the Christian saints, not all of them, but just about 4 or 5, to give an essence of what we believe in our saintliness or the divinity of God Himself. It seems there was a group of children who are taken by the teacher to the smaller places in that town, and she took them to the temple, she took them to a mosque, she took them to a church and many other places. And when they came back, these were small children. The teacher is supposed to have asked, "Children, you went round so many places, you went round the temple, and you saw many things in that. You saw the beautiful pictures of the saints or godly persons. You saw the windows, or what we call the stained glass windows, which had also certain pictures. And there were so many other things that you saw today. And so I want to ask you a question. Who are the saints? Who are the saints or saintly persons?" There's one child who remembered and said that she had seen a picture of saint perhaps somewhere on the window, but a stained glass window. And she could not say that this saint, that saint. And being small, she could not identify the saint himself. But then she gave an answer which was a very thoughtful one. The stained glass allows the light in different shades or different colors to come in. And so she said, saints are those who allow heavenly light to pass through. To heavenly light to pass through. I think that's a good definition of a saint. A saint is one who allows the heavenly light to pass through to us. And so perhaps we can always take inspiration from saints and sages. I was just coming, I saw a big billboard there, I think tomorrow's program of the Sai Baba, somewhere in the town, and a beautiful word that was written there. The hands that hold are much more holier than the hands that are joined in prayer. Surely prayer is very good. Prayer elevates us to God Himself. But at the same time, what's the use of our prayer? What's the use of our devotions if we can't help each other, if we can't support each other, if we can't console each other? I think that is also needed. We in our Christian tradition, we say that religion has 2 sides of the coin. The one coin is God Himself, the one side is God Himself. The other side is the humanity, or the neighbor, we call it, the other persons. What's the use of my joining my hands and perhaps praising God if I have nothing to do with my next door neighbor? That is also important for us. And so, my dear friends, I would just sort of take you to my small we say, who is a saint? As I said, the definitions of saints are many, and perhaps in every tradition, in every religious tradition, we have the different sort of aspects or conceptions of the saint itself. And in Christianity, we have more than 10,000 saints. We call it recorded saints as such. Unrecorded, we say everyone who is in heaven is a saint. But the ones who have been recognized by the church or perhaps by us, we say that perhaps 10,000 saints are there. And most of the saints, consolation for us, they were not big people, they were not holy people, but they were ordinary people. And ordinary people like us, and perhaps as being ordinary, their life is counted by the extraordinary things that they did. They did the same things, ordinary things, in an extraordinary way. That is why we call them saints. They dedicated their lives in the loving pursuit of God. Many devoted themselves to the service of the poor, sick, and marginalized. And almost all of them are known for their humility and simplicity. In the Christian church, we have a sort of not everyone can become a saint or be declared a saint. There's a difference, as I said, between becoming a saint, where we say all those who are in heaven are saints. But to be declared a saint, there are 4 steps or 4 level of steps, as it were. It's called the process of canonization. The word canon means to make it official. So first we call it the servant of God. So when a person who is a holy person who dies, at least we take 5 years time to dissolve, or rather to spread his memory, and we call him a servant of God. A servant is an initial investigation by the local bishop, and after a minimum waiting period of 5 years, the case is sent to Rome and the candidate is given the title of servant of God. Devara Sevaka. Devara Sevaki. The second step is called a little higher step. The Vatican congregation makes a thorough study of the persons, their writings, their reputation, and the Pope declares them as venerable. The third step is called the blessed, or beatification we call it. For this we need a miracle. In fact, to become a saint in our tradition, you need 2 miracles. And miracles, extraordinary happenings that don't happen normally. A cancer patient has been detected. By the intercession of this particular saint, the cancer goes away. These doctors have no explanation how the cancer went away. Or perhaps a person who is called dead or half dead or paralyzed gets up. And therefore, this kind of miracles we speak of. There are blessed and the sainthood. These are the 2 miracles that we think of. The normal people, or rather, we always think of Mother Mary as one of our saints, and she's the Mother of God, Mother of Jesus. And Mary exemplifies perfect faith, humility, and obedience to God's will, her yes to becoming the Mother of God. She remains central to the Catholic devotion, particularly to the Rosary. We Christians say the Rosary, Japamale or Japasara, like your beads that you gave me us now beautifully. The beads are counted as we say our prayers, the Hail Mary, Holy Mary. And due to her role in salvation history and her unique holiness, Mary is considered the Queen of Heaven, reigning over all the saints and angels. We also speak about Saint Joseph, the father of Jesus, the foster father of Jesus, and patron saint of workers. Saint Joseph was supposed to have been a carpenter. And a carpenter today or those days, it was a low job, a lowly paid job, and perhaps a discriminated type of people were carpenters. But then, as a humble carpenter, in fact, the May 1st is celebrated as May Day, and it goes to a little of a Christian tradition because the Workers' Day. And we call Saint Joseph the patron of the workers as such, and known for his extraordinary humility, faithfulness, and trust in God's plan despite life's uncertainties. He protected the Holy Family with quiet dignity, quiet dignity. We have also the other saints like St. Peter and Paul, who are considered, as Jesus had 12 apostles, close apostles, and of them we mention all the apostles, of course, but mostly Peter and Paul. They are considered as the pillars of the church, apostolic pillars. St. Peter was the first martyr and patron of popes, and he was a fisherman. St. Paul was formerly a persecutor, one who persecuted but transformed his life and became a disciple of Christ. We have also the other saints like Augustine. Augustine's 300 BC, which means it's almost 1800 years. He is still remembered for his beautiful sayings, books, teachings, etc. One of his sayings is, "Our hearts are restless, and they shall rest only when they rest in you, in God. Our hearts are restless, and they shall rest only when they rest in God." Like these beautiful sayings are there. St. Thomas Aquinas is considered a philosopher saint by us, and also St. Francis of Assisi, whom I'll reference, and St. Teresa of Lisieux. St. Joan of Arc is considered as one of the lady soldiers at a time when ladies were not going to battle or something like that. This lady is considered as a model for especially young girls to be brave, to fight against the evil, to fight against perhaps the influences of evil as such. And now I take 5 saints, just an example of our Christian, what we call saintology. And as I said, there are 10,000 saints, but then I just take 5 that perhaps might interest some of us because they are special to us and they are all special to the world also. The first is St. Francis of Assisi. You may have heard, the Pope Francis and also our Pope Leo and the others also make a lot of noise about what we call Assisi. Assisi is a city in Europe where St. Francis was born, but he changed the whole history of not only that state of Assisi, the town of Assisi, but also changed the whole geography and the climate or the ecology of the whole world. He is called an ecological saint because he speaks of birds, he speaks of moon, he calls sun my brother, moon my sister, and so in this way he covers and he captures the world as such. But this man, there are different states in his life. The first one, his early life was a boisterous life, wealth and indulgence. The second one was the encounter with Jesus, and he's supposed to have met Jesus in the form of a beggar. He was so much impressed. He tried to help the beggar, not knowing that he was Jesus himself, but then the beggar is the one who led him to his true encounter with God himself. Embrace poverty and service, and also legacy of a spiritual type that he got. So St. Francis of Assisi, we say his transformative journey, born in a wealthy family, but indulge in lavish lifestyle. His profound encounter with a beggar led him to abandon his goods and embrace a life of Christian poverty. He took up a symbolic habit. Habit is something like, so I'm wearing a white one, but the real habit is like a sackcloth that is wound on you. And in Europe, where Assisi Francis was born, it was very cold, and therefore he put this sackcloth, which was considered a cloak, and that cloak was tied with 3 knots. You see the 3 knots there, and those 3 knots represent poverty, chastity, and obedience for Francis. St. Francis, the peace mission in those years, 12, 19, you can imagine. We are now fighting among ourselves. We are so suspicious among ourselves. But he daringly make a trip to the Middle East to make peace with Sultan al-Kamil, demonstrating his commitment to dialogue and conflict. That time he was called a fool to go to that end and in order to make peace and this one, because we Christians and Muslims were at that time in what's called a crusade period, wherein we were fighting with each other or perhaps destroying each other also. But St. Francis is supposed to have been very much touched with the poverty of Jesus, the poor being of Jesus. And so the Christmas that we see today, the Christmas crib we call it, where Jesus is born and the shepherds, etc., was started first by Francis of Assisi. And he is the one who gave shape to this, to say that ultimately he said Jesus has to be recognized as a person, as a lover of the poor. Because he was born as a poor. He was born in what we call the cowshed. He was born in a stable. And therefore, it starts our Christian history. Our story starts from the crib, from the cowshed, as it were. And that is why the first nativity scene is important. Saint Francis also is supposed to have received what's called the stigmata. Stigmata are those sort of wounds, figures of the wounds that come on the hand, on the feet, etc. And he just had it. Of course, he suffered a lot. It was more painful. But then he is supposed to have, like Jesus who had the nail marks on his hands and legs, so also this man is supposed to have. He founded the Franciscan order. St. Francis is remembered now as a votary for peace. As a votary for peace. Because everywhere where peace and reconciliation is spoken of, especially among the religions, St. Francis is spoken of, because he says, yes, my religion is important. My religion for me is important, but then I have to listen to the others. I have also to make peace with the others. And in this way, he was an votary for peace. He was a champion of ecology. 4th of October is kept up in many places as the day of environment, and therefore ecology. And finally, he was a friend of the poor, always identifying himself with the poor. My second saint I have taken as Mother Teresa, Blessed Mother Teresa, whom you know very well. She was born in Albania. But at the age of 18, she was dying, as it were, to go to India and other places where the poor were there. I want to serve the poor. And where is Albania? And where is perhaps India? But before she went to India, in order to come to India, she had to learn English. She had to be part of a community, a congregation. And that's why she joined what's called the Loreto Sisters and worked for many years in England. But then, due to the political situation there, we will be very sad to hear that she could never go back to her house. Could never go back to her country, because Albania, one of the East communist countries, and England, one of the developed countries, were always suspicious of each other. And Mother Teresa was not allowed to come back because they thought she would be a spy for England as such. And therefore, she had to sacrifice her own parents, mother. She could not even go for the death of her mother and the other families. And not only that, she is supposed to have what is called a call within a call. When she was in Calcutta, she was transferred to Calcutta, and she was with the Loreto Sisters there, one of the good schools of the Christian communities run by the Loreto Sisters, but educating surely the good ones and the little able ones. But then Mother Teresa found herself very much at odds to say that I am surrounded with poverty on all sides. How would I live in this atmosphere where there is everything nice, of course, but then my heart is with the poor. And that is why the superiors of hers perhaps must have noticed this restlessness, and they said, why don't you go for a retreat? Perhaps in the retreat you can You can clarify many of your doubts with God, with your spiritual director. And she went for the retreat as such. And they say, a call within a call. Mother Teresa calls it a call within a call, a conversion within a conversion. And therefore, she said, I am a Loreto sister with a habit, etc. But now I would like to go to the poor. It was not understood. She was misunderstood. But then, alone, she walks out of the convent, takes up the habit, or rather the dress of the poor, a white sari with three stripes of the blue stripes representing Mother Mary, etc. And therefore she starts her life with radical charity and radical closeness to the poor. Many not helped her, many tried to help her, but in the beginning she was misunderstood, and in fact she was suspected that what is she trying to do? Why she is not happy here? But then Mother Teresa, being a Mother Teresa, she said, my heart cries out for the poor. In the beginning she went begging, literally begging for her in order to look after her initial patients, the people who were close to her, babies, the sick, etc. There's an incident that is repeated, which I read in one of our books, that Mother Teresa one day went for begging. And when she went to begging from perhaps place to place and shop to shop, there's one man who spat on her, on her palm as it were. Mother Teresa takes it and says, this is for me, but give something for my children. Give something for my children. So that was her spirit. Because Mother Teresa today is remembered as one of the great ladies with Bharat Ratna and Nobel Prize, etc. But she went an agonizing past. She made her traditional vows, and one of the vows that she took was, we normally be religious, we take 3 vows, which we call poverty, chastity, and obedience to our superior. And Mother Teresa takes the 4th vow, love for the poor. Love for the poor. And therefore, dignity and love for the poor was also one of the things that she considered herself a beggar, begging for beggars. B. A beggar begging for beggars. That is what she defined herself, and that is what she went. Mother Teresa, as you know, she started houses for the dying, orphanage for children, mobile clinics, school for education, etc. And most of these institutions, as it were, are still with us. And her mission expanded from India. They were when she started, she had only about 6 followers. They became 18, and now there are more than 4,000 sisters all over the world. Mother Teresa's sisters, they call him. Mother Teresa, as I said, the 13 founding members and 4,000 houses, and she's remembered for her compassion, for her love for the poor, known as Angel of Mercy, Angel of Compassion. My 3rd saint, I'm just rushing because I know that I'm given just 1 hour time for this one. My 3rd saint is a very young and perhaps a strange saint, because there is an impression that the young people cannot become saints. You have to become old, you have to have the beard, you have to look very saintly, and there is one. But this saint defies our definition of a saint. He was a young man. He died at the age of 15. And therefore, perhaps his name is Carlo. Carlo is Charles Acutis, is a teenage model of sanctity and celebrated for his profound faith and his pioneering use of digital mode to promote digital media to promote religious values and devotion. You can imagine digital, which is considered sometimes dangerous, so on and so on. But this particular young man says that the digital world has got much to offer to us also. And raised in Milano, that's Italy, Carlo developed an early passion for computers and video games, and he taught himself programming and web design, actively assigning his parish and school with various digital projects. He died, he was born on 3rd May 1991. He died at the age of 15 in 206, and he was canonized this year. The first saint canonized by Pope Leo, the new Pope, was this particular saint just 2-3 months ago, and therefore he becomes the first saint of this millennium, as it were. Carlo was very good in what we call, he took it as a passion to document the miracles, the religious miracles, the Christian miracles that had taken place, and see that what was special about each of these miracles. He was also a lover of Mother Mary, fond of Mother Mary and the saints. Unfortunately, at the age of 12, he gets what's called the blood cancer, leukemia, and he's dying, but then always cheerful. Even at that moment of his death, he asked his mother, "Why are you crying?" Because I am happy, I am happily returning to God. And this is the way perhaps he sort of encourages his own people to accept final illness and peaceful acceptance. And early October 2006, he develops a severe inflammation of the throat, and despite worsening of the pain, he faced his illness with profound peace, and he dies at the age of 15, and he is declared a saint now of the Catholic Church and made a patron, or what we call a model for the youth as such. I take another saint. You have heard of the Jesuits. Here in Bangalore, we have the St. Joseph's College and many other Jesuit education. Many of our students are studying in these colleges, etc. So the Jesuit. And the founder of the Jesuits, a very strange combination and a strange, perhaps, I would say, a phenomenon that a person who could not even write and read, and perhaps was this one, is considered a saint today and a founder of a big congregation called the Jesuit congregation. He was, as a young man, he was an ambitious and crazy soldier. A crazy soldier. From a young age, Ignatius, the word ignis in Latin means fire. A fire. That means a man with fire in his heart. Was keen for military exercises and driven by a desire for fame. He joined the army at the age of 17, patterning the life on the stories of knights and chivalry. In 1509, he took up arms for the Duke Antonio Maric de Lara, and at the Battle of Pamplona, some of the saints start with failures. Many don't start with success. And Saint Ignatius had a grievous wound at the War of Pamplona, and he loses his leg. He considers this madness, and he wants to come back to life and once again be a general of the army as such. But then the doctors told him, "You cannot. This is a grievous wound and you cannot come." But then God leads him through his wound in order to become a saint. He accepts it, and in the beginning, though he curses God, he never believed in God first. But then when he started believing God, he curses God. "Why did you make me like this?" And it seems he started reading what's called the lives of saints. The lives of saints themselves. And there was an inspiration in his head. Why can't I become a saint? How do I become a saint? And that is how in him was born this desire in order to be saint. St. Ignatius, while recovering, his sister-in-law brought him the lives of Christ and the life of the saints, and these books would influence the whole life as such. And later on, he founded his society, which called in the beginning with just 3 persons, and one of them was called St. Francis Xavier. You may remember that we Christians go quite often to Goa. In Goa is the what we call the mortal remains of St. Francis Xavier in the basilica. They are called, they are kept on top. And St. Francis Xavier belonged to this order of the Jesuits, as it were. And once again, the Francis also was a little cracked type, having dreams and his own visions, as it were. And by that time, St. Ignatius of Loyola had converted himself. And he was watching this young man, Francis, much younger in age, of course. But then he was going about. And he was so happy as if there is nothing in the world to be this one. And he tells St. Francis of Xavier one sentence that converts St. Francis of Assisi. And the sentence is, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? You know, many of us are trying to gain the whole world, but some of us are losing our souls as such. And that is the beautiful experience to say that one word or one sentence converts St. Francis of Assisi. So with this, perhaps St. Francis of Xavier came to India, and he also sort of is considered a great saint for us. The motto of the Jesuits, the Jesuit fathers and the Jesuit congregation is very simple. In Latin, they call it ad maiorem Dei gloriam. For everything for the greater glory of God. Anything that I do, there is one measure. There is one bottle or one perhaps you can liter bottle that you can use. The only measure that I can say is, if it is for the greater glory of God, I go. I give in. But if it is not for the greater glory of God, perhaps I am hitting my rock, as it were, hitting my head against a rock, nothing will happen. So therefore, the greater glory of God is important. My last saint is also an Indian saint, what we call Kuriakose Elias Shavara. You have heard of the Christ College in Bangalore, the Christ institutions in Bangalore. So the founder of the Christ institution is Saint Kuriakose Elias. He's also a very interesting person because, of course, Christ has developed a lot now, but the founding story is a different one. Born on February 10th, 1805 and ordained as a priest in 1829, he passed away 3rd January 1871. Kuriakose Elias Shavara was an Indian Catholic priest, founder of the religious leader, as a religious leader, philosopher, and a social reformer. He was the first canonized saint of the Indian origin and a member of the Syro-Malabar Church. Pope Francis canonized him on 23rd of November 2014. Kuriakose was born to Shavara and Mariam Topil, as it were. Saint Kuriakose, from a very young age, he felt drawn to a monastic life, and along with some other priests, he founded the monastic order, the Servants of Mary Immaculate, and was elected as the first prior general. Something touching about him is, he was the first one who opened a school for the untouchables. Although he came from a Syrian Christian family, Syrian Christian family is considered a higher edge, as it were. But then Shavara was the first Indian Christian to bravely admit untouchables into schools. Which means when you bring those times when they brought the intouchables, the other ones just walked away. They didn't go, but he didn't mind because he said, my mission is for these. And he also opened up an institution for Sanskrit studies in those age. Perhaps we Christians, may not have shown much interest in Sanskrit, but then this is the man who told us that the roots of India are in the Sanskrit traditions. And he published Sanskrit education. He providing Sanskrit education to the people of lower caste and directly challenging the social bias as such. He was instrumental in establishing what's called Palli Kudam. Palli means the temple. Kudam means the house, as it were. The schools next to the church, next to the temple. So because he said that this goes along. Inasmuch as the spiritual enlightenment is given in the churches, in the temples, the enlightenment of the world is given in our schools, and that is also important. And so he played a great role in starting midday meals for the programs. He understood the need of the people. The midday meals was not started today and these days, but started in those days in the 18th century in order to encourage the children to come to the schools. And in this way, he provided the best of education, tried to provide the education to the Dalits and poor people as such. Kuriakose introduced also what's called pidiari. That's a handful of rice. He encouraged the Christians that every day when you go to eat, when you go for lunch, take one handful, keep it separately. And on Sunday when you come for the Mass, bring this handful of rice that has been collected, give it to the church so that the church can give it to the other poor people. Kuriakose also started the third printing press, not the first one, the third printing press in Kerala, and the paper that's called Deepika, which is even now going on, was started by him. Meaning to say, he understood that printing technology, or perhaps philosophy, to say that the printing can make a lot of impression and also a lot of service to the people. He also founded the Congregation of Carmelites and the others, women congregations, that is one. Finally, he was a family man, a man of the family. What do you mean by man of the family? That he encouraged the family traditions, that the family who stays together, prays together, a family that prays together always stays together. And therefore he said that a good Christian family is the image of heaven. Those of us who have not seen heaven, perhaps when you see a good family, a happy family, is as good as you have experienced a bit of heaven in our own life. So, my dear friends, I close with this. The saints of today are the living examples inspiring us for virtue and faith-filled lives amid modern challenges and certainties. The saints of today, or the saints of the church, are also a living heritage. They pass through, they allow the light of the spiritual light or the heavenly light to pass through from heaven to the earthly mode. And the consoling thing for us is the saints are ordinary people, but people of hope, people who have struggled, people who have suffered, but at the same time believed in God. So I leave you at this. I thank you very much for this occasion that is given to me. God bless you.